If Dana White doesn't like you, he isn't afraid of making it known. From having back and forths with reporters, media, other promoters, and most famously his fighters, Dana has thrown his fair share of fighters under the bus and given them some choice words. But arguably his most notorious criticisms are ones where he has thrown his own champions under the bus, the guys who represent the UFC at the highest level. So that's what we are going to focus on today. This is the Fight franchise, and 10 times Dana White has criticised his own champions. Number 10. Aljamain Sterling. The rocky relationship which has inspired this list. Dana White, ever since Aljamain Sterling has become champion, doesn't seem his biggest fan, with the Funkmaster winning the title via a legal knee, and when Sterling rematched Jon, White would come out and say the judges screwed that one up when they gave Sterling the decision win. But it is the most recent criticism Dana White has had for the 135-pound champ, which gives the impression he isn't the Funkmaster's biggest fan. In a recent press conference calling out Aldo, who is allegedly out of the upcoming bout against Sean O'Malley due to an injury he has suffered, White would go on to say, "If you're not healthy, don't take the fight. We can have somebody else fight instead." This criticism is fair and quite honestly justified, but a bit harsh as Sterling only just defended his title and is expected to defend his belt 3 months later. Yes, we love active champions, but no other champion is being asked and forced to turn around that fast. It won't surprise me if O'Malley beats Sterling. We'll probably see Dana White smiling from ear to ear. Number 9. Brock Lesnar. This entry is the most light-hearted on the list, and one which Dana doesn't directly criticise Brock, but puts him in his place with a sly remark at the UFC 100 post-fight press conference. At UFC 100, in the biggest event UFC held at the time, Brock Lesnar would headline against Frank Mir in a now legendary fight. Lesnar would secure the legendary second-round stoppage to defend his heavyweight title. But what was arguably more legendary was his post-fight speech. Brock would go on a tirade about all sorts, but what makes him enter this list is his words surrounding Bud Light. Bud Light would be the huge sponsor of the event, with their logo emblazoned on the canvas, which is when Brock Lesnar called out the beer company and said he preferred Coors Light instead. This would have caused outrage with Dana and the UFC brass, who allegedly grilled Brock backstage, where at the post-fight press conference Dana remarked Brock loves Bud Light, which Brock toasted to and nodded in agreement. No matter who is paying you or sponsoring the fighter, you don't mess with Dana White and the UFC, and especially their money. Number 8. BJ Penn. BJ Penn is one of the UFC's greatest ever fighters and has given the UFC and MMA so much in his long and storied career. A real character who wore his heart on his sleeve, BJ Penn would fight in the octagon and also fight for what he believes in outside the octagon. When he was early on in his career, BJ Penn did the unthinkable and beat Matt Hughes for the UFC welterweight title, winning in spectacular fashion, securing a rear naked choke in the first round. This was it. The UFC had a superstar on their hands, ready to blow and become the next big thing. However, BJ Penn and the UFC got into a massive contract dispute, which is when Penn bet on himself and decided to leave the UFC. Dana White gave a cold response on his welterweight champion, simply stating, "I'm looking forward to moving on and crowning a new champion." The backstage conversations were not as subdued, with Dana White cursing out Penn saying, "You are effing done, and you'll never fight for the UFC again." Penn would come back and fight for the UFC again, but it's safe to say Dana was not too happy with his at the time welterweight champion. Number 7. Francis Ngannou. Dana White now probably really dislikes Francis Ngannou. After failing to secure a deal with Ngannou, he has now moved on to pastures new and is looking to take his career to the PFL. But when Francis first started in the UFC, he was one of Dana White's favourite fighters, with Dana throwing huge promotion behind the Cameroon Destroyer. But it was once he became champion is when the rift between both parties began. Once Francis became heavyweight champ, he wanted to be treated as such and wanted to make serious money as well as securing other things for himself and the UFC roster. Right after securing his title, the UFC first disrespected him and booked an interim title fight between Cyril Gane and Derek Lewis, which Gane won. This led to Dana White criticising his heavyweight champion and pointing out he was scared to defend his title against Gane. Francis Ngannou is scared to fight? Well damn, that would mean the entire roster is terrified to fight. For Dana to call out his heavyweight champion for being scared to fight isn't a good way to promote your so-called baddest man on the planet. Dana continued with the scared comments all the way to his release, claiming Francis wants easy fights for the biggest pay. Dana truly wanted to bury his former champ on his exit from the UFC, especially now he's got Jon Jones as the heavyweight champion. Number 6. Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest mixed martial artists ever and considered by some as their number one of all time. Demetrius Johnson holds the legendary record in the UFC as the fighter with the most consecutive title defenses of all time. Dana White and Demetrius have had quite the sour relationship over the years, with Dana eventually trading Mighty Mouse for Ben Askren once he was done with DJ. But it's Dana's words in 2017 against DJ that we are looking at and where he verbally went at his 125-pound champ. Demetrius Johnson at the time was doing amazing, defending his belt, but was not a massive massive pay-per-view draw, so Dana White was trying to get him to fight TJ Dillashaw. DJ, however, didn't believe TJ deserved a title shot, which is when Dana truly solidified and buried his 125-pound champ, who would state Mighty Mouse has the lowest selling pay-per-view in the modern era of the UFC history. Maybe if he fought TJ, he could get views and make money, but he absolutely refuses to fight the guy. It's ridiculous. This is your greatest champion ever, and instead of trying to keep it behind closed doors and reason with him, Dana happily put DJ on blast. No matter how good the streak or the title reign, when the boss is pissed at you, he makes it happily known. Number 5. Tyron Woodley. Not all the criticism from Dana White is bad and unjustified, and Dana White isn't afraid from calling out his champions, and this is most definitely the case with Tyron Woodley. Woodley and White had a very rocky relationship as fighter and promoter, and butted heads and didn't get along on multiple occasions. Dana was full anti-Woodley after his lackluster performance at UFC 214 versus Damian Maia. UFC 214 would feature the much anticipated rematch between Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier headlining, with Woodley facing Maia in the co-main event. Woodley put on a safe and conservative performance, not engaging with Maia's jiu-jitsu, as he knew it was the only way he would lose his title. Woodley won the unanimous decision in a boring fight. Dana would lambast Woodley, saying he failed to deliver entertainment, and would also state they broke the record for the least punches thrown in a title fight. Dana wasn't too happy with his welterweight champ, and let the world and Woodley know about it. This was a bit harsh, as if you're in Woodley's shoes, what do you try and do? Grapple with Maia and risk losing your title to entertain the fans, or secure an easy win, keep your belt, which means more money? It's safe to say we know which Dana would have preferred. Number 4. Anderson Silva. If you ask Dana White a list of his favourite fighters of all time, Anderson Silva would be very high up on that list. The Spider delivered countless legendary moments for the UFC and was one of its most legendary fighters who helped elevate the sport and take it to the next level. Anderson Silva was beloved by the UFC, the fans and Dana White. UFC 112 would be the first event in Abu Dhabi and the Middle East after they purchased a stake in Zuffa. The UFC as a thank you would bring a massive event which would be headlined by Anderson Silva and Vitor Belfort. But Belfort pulled out with an injury, which meant many names were thrown forward, but just like the previous entry, Damian Maia would headline alongside Anderson Silva. The fight would be a dud where Silva outstruck Maia on the feet and didn't engage with Maia's jiu-jitsu. In a now infamous interview with Ariel Helwani, Dana brutally gave Anderson an earful, stating how embarrassed he was with the fight and that he left early and gave the belt to Anderson Silva's manager to wrap the belt around him. He would call out Silva for fighting like a jackass and would have a private meeting with him regarding his performance. For one of the greatest UFC fighters to be criticised and murdered verbally by Dana should be a lesson to the roster that no one is safe. Number 3. Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo has given so much to the sport of MMA, and specifically the UFC. Jose Aldo was instrumental in helping build the featherweight division, and became a must-watch fighter from the lower weight class. Jose Aldo, who is a UFC Hall of Famer, it's surprising to think that Dana White would criticize a fighter he has openly said he has so much respect for, but that's what he did. While Conor McGregor was on his meteoric rise, Aldo and McGregor were scheduled to fight in, at the time, the biggest UFC pay-per-view of all time. With a huge press tour and millions spent on promotion, 2 weeks from the fight, Aldo would pull out with a broken rib. Dana White criticised his featherweight champion and would claim it was a bruised rib and not a broken one, downplaying the severity of Aldo's injury, with the two going back and forth, with Aldo showing x-rays showing he wasn't lying. For a guy to give you so much and help build the featherweight division, for Dana White to go against his champ and side with the up-and-coming contender Conor McGregor, shows Dana White don't care if you're the champ. If you aren't doing as he says, he doesn't mind burying you, even if you are his featherweight champion. Number 2. Jon Jones. Dana White and Jon Jones have had a rocky relationship, mainly due to Jon Jones and his antics outside of the octagon, which has seen Dana White having to defend and justify the GOAT of MMA. But it was the chaos around UFC 151 where Dana White went in on Jon Jones and his team. Jon Jones would be scheduled to fight Dan Henderson at UFC 151, with Henderson pulling out. This led to UFC scrambling for a short notice replacement. The UFC eventually landed on Chael Sonnen, who had just lost for a second time against Anderson Silva. This should have been an easy fight for Jones, which is why the UFC set it up. But Jones and his team refused to take the fight, which ended the whole UFC 151 event being cancelled. Dana White blasted Jones and his team, calling them out for refusing to take a short notice fight, which is where Dana blamed Jones and his team for murdering UFC 151. Dana would even call out Jones' first 3 title defenses, and even said Jones will not be liked by the fans. This criticism is justified, but Jon Jones isn't obligated to take short notice fights, which is why seeing Dana bury the best prospect and champion he has ever had is wild. Number 1. GSP. When Dana White is asked about his GOAT list, GSP will definitely feature on it. GSP was a pioneer in the sport, While the sport was beginning to grow, he would help take MMA from, as it was known as back then, human cockfighting, to really treating it as a sport and bringing real legitimacy to it. He would be a well-spoken and well-dressed character who was super marketable and became a household name. GSP was known for his conservative and safe style, and Dana had choice words for the Canadian over the years. But it's what happened on the night of UFC 167, Dana White truly buried his welterweight champion. After a legendary fight with Johnny Hendricks, GSP would win the close decision victory, which many fans and media disputed. But right after the win, GSP was giving talks on a break/retirement from MMA. Dana White in the post-fight press conference lost it, calling out GSP, saying he didn't think he won, and he owes the belt, the fans, the company, and Johnny Hendricks a rematch. He also didn't entertain the idea of George taking a hiatus, saying that's not how it works around here. GSP at the time was the UFC's biggest pay-per-view star, and for Dana to bury him and call out his champion is one of the craziest things we have seen him do. Let's just say Dana was not happy with this one. Did you enjoy the video? Let us know down in the comments below. Who do you think suffered the most brutal criticism on this list? Put that down in the comments below. And what videos would you like to see made soon? Put that down in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more fight content coming soon. We hope you enjoyed the video and we'll catch you in the next one.